Hey, Walter Sorrells back with more tips for the knife maker. Today, testing this budget anvil. So a few months ago, I tested a Chinese-made budget anvil from Vevor to see if you could spend budget bucks and get an anvil that'll last you for a while. Now this is sort of their upgrade model from the one that I tried before, but at a smaller poundage. So we'll be kind of testing the size of this anvil as well as the quality. And obviously my focus is going to be on using this anvil specifically for bladesmithing, but if it passes muster for bladesmithing, good chance it's going to work okay for blacksmiths also. So two key points about this anvil. First, it's pretty small, like I said. It's only a little over 100 pounds. And second, of course, it's cheap. So let's start banging iron and see how it holds up. Here's the anvil I'm reviewing. Full disclosure, I'm not being paid for this review, but Vevor did send me the anvil for free, so take that all for whatever it's worth. The anvil is a Chinese-made 50 kilo or roughly 110 pound steel anvil in a German pattern, as distinguished from the more commonly found style in the Anglo-Saxon world known as a London pattern, which has a small shelf known as a table on it. No table here. The face is about 15 by 5 inches or 40 by 13 centimeters. The price here is 216 bucks. Is that a deal? Well, that remains to be seen, but I can tell you for sure it's a lot cheaper than US or European made anvils. Vevor lists it as a cast iron anvil in the catalog listing, though all the other online documentation refers to it as cast steel. In fact, as we'll see, it is not cast iron, it's steel. There's a hardy hole, that's the square hole, and a Pritchell hole, which is the round one. You can use these for drifting and for mounting tools and stakes and things like that. According to Vevor, the anvil is hardened to 55 on the Rockwell C scale, which is fairly hard. I should mention that Vevor sells two lines of anvils. The more expensive set, of which this is one, are hardened to 55, while the cheaper line, the one that I reviewed a few months back, are hardened to 50. They're also painted different colors. Otherwise, don't see much difference. They all seem to be the same pattern. So I started off by doing a quick ball bearing test. The ball bearing jumps up to my hand, which is a good sign. On a cheap cast iron anvil or an anvil with an improperly hardened face, the ball will tend to kind of die when it hits the face. Not doing that here. Like the anvil I tested last month, the top has a very flat but fairly rough ground surface with relatively sharp edges. A more expensive anvil will typically have a more polished face. I'll go ahead and grind a little radius on them. The sparks thrown from the anvil subdivide and sparkle, indicating that it is, in fact, steel rather than cast iron. Again, that's a good thing. Is it truly 55 on the Rockwell scale? Well, it's too big to fit on my Rockwell tester, so I'll do a few subjective tests. So quick note, guys. If you've watched any of my videos over the past 12, 13 years, you know I've been out there saving you money and steering you towards better products and new techniques. Want to help me help you even more? Become a Patreon supporter and keep us in business. You know, a lot of people get the impression that there's a ton of money in YouTube. It's really not the case. If I relied on YouTube advertising to pay for these videos, I'd make about $3 an hour, maybe. So pitch in, help out, and oh, by the way, get access to plans for a huge number of knife and tool making videos that I've produced over the years. Link in the cards and description. As always, huge thanks to my Patreon supporters. Now, back to it. First, I'll just bang on it a little. The hammer rebounds nicely and doesn't leave any deep dings or marks. It rings like crazy, which is good from the perspective that it suggests there aren't any major cracks, but boy, it's piercing. I'll wrap a chain around it to moderate the sound a little. Now, is 55 too hard, or is it possibly even harder than 55 to the point that it might be brittle? I'll whack on the tips of the horn and the face, as well as smacking it on the corners of the face just to see if anything cracks or deforms or chips. It scarred up my hammer, I can tell you that, which again suggests that it is somewhere in the vicinity of 55. Again, no sign of any problems, no cracking, no chipping. None of this is very scientific, but if you've been hammering on anvils for 20 odd years, you start to have a feel for bad anvils. No red flags so far. The Hardy hole's a little crude, and my Hardy tools for my main Mankell anvil don't fit, but that's not unusual. All Hardy holes are not made exactly the same. Okay, time to start using it. I'm making a production run of chisels, so I'll just run the whole batch across this anvil. This is not super complex forging, but it gives me plenty of opportunity to get a feel for the anvil. Subjectively, I like the anvil. For a small anvil, it takes the blows of the hammer solidly, it doesn't vibrate weirdly, it doesn't dent excessively. It feels even across the face, indicating no problems with uneven heat treating or casting voids. Again, purely subjectively, it does feel like this anvil, as built, is harder than the 50 HRC anvil I reviewed earlier. What I'm working on here today are scabbard chisels, which are a kind of unusual chisel specifically made for making Japanese scabbards, but they have a actually very wide use in woodworking generally. If you're interested in how these are made, I'll drop a link to the video that I did the other day that shows the full process. So yeah, still not seeing any red flags here. Straight out of the box, this anvil acquitted itself really well. Like I said, I dressed the edges of the table a little. Some people might want to polish the top a little bit, but basically we're in pretty good shape here. Hey, by the way, I've kind of focused in this video on making a bunch of chisels on this anvil. If you're interested in picking up one of these chisels for yourself, I'll have them available on my website, waltersorrellsblades.com. Saya chisels are very hard to track down, and I find them to be amazingly useful in the knife making shop. If you try making a Japanese sword scabbard, pretty much a must-have tool. So link in the cards and description for that. So what can I tell you about longevity? Not much. However, at the end of the day, an anvil's just a big hunk of steel. As long as it's heat treated right, it should last virtually forever. I can't speak for every anvil they sell, but of the 2 Vevor anvils I've reviewed now, I really don't see any heat treating problems at all. So the main question is really whether this anvil's right for you. At 50 kilos, this one's $216, where the larger 60 kilo runs $269. Compared to US made anvils that are running close to $1,000 these days, this is just stupid cheap. Looking for an extra anvil, a starter anvil, something that you just want to haul around in your truck for demonstrations or hammer-ins, this might fit the bill in any of those cases. All right, so let's wrap up. Is this going to be as perfect as, a 250-pound American-made anvil or whatever? No, it's not. Also, it's not a farrier's anvil, so if you're planning on shoeing horses, not the thing. But look, I gave this anvil a good workout as a bladesmith, and it does what an anvil's supposed to do. There's no indication of, metallurgical problems, no cracking, it's not dinging up excessively. The castings look fine. At $216, I gotta say, this is a huge steal. However, Vevor, the company that, sells this anvil, also sells a variety of other sizes and kind of quality levels of anvils. If you can afford it, I'd probably recommend picking up the 130-pound anvil instead of this one. But a few bucks saved on this one will buy you a couple pairs of tongs or take you down the road a little further on some other tools. So, maybe it's worth the sacrifice to you. Look, there are some cheap tools out there that you buy and then 6 months later you're just dumping it because they stink. That's not going to be the case with this one. So bottom line here is that maybe you want to get a little bigger one than this, but there's every indication here that this, for a hobbyist bladesmith or blacksmith, you can buy this anvil and you're going to get a lot of years of use out of it. So if you're cash strapped and just want to test the waters, this anvil could be a great place to start. All right, guys, thanks for watching and keep on making those knives. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe and make sure that you click on that bell so you get notified of all the latest videos. Want to buy a knife from me? Check out my modern blades at tacticsarmory.com. Digging the channel? You can support our video making efforts on Patreon. I've been banging away on these videos for like 10 years, so I hope you'll show some love for all that hard work. Link in the cards and descriptions. Finally, if you're interested in making Japanese swords, check out my full line of Japanese sword videos where I show how to forge Japanese swords as well as how to polish them and how to make fittings, handles, and scabbards. WalterSorrellsBlades.com.